the women experience both extremes. They go down into the depth of the bitterness and the hardships, and they feel the pain of every woman who's azuva, who's not loved. But that is also where the key is to growing and drawing from, weaving into the world, the surrounding lights, the lights of emunah and the lights of hope. This video was made possible through the kind support of my sponsors over at Patreon. Patreon is a great way to help independent creators like myself produce original content. If you'd like to get more English language videos from me, please consider becoming a supporter via Patreon. You can find the link in the description below. Thank you very much. So our topic for today is the wise-hearted women. In our parasha, Parashat Vayakel, in the second Aliyah, we are told about the people of Israel volunteering various sub-materials and jewelry to the building of the Mishkan, the building of the tabernacle. And a special place is given to the women. So all the Jewish people volunteer of what they have, but it appears that the spirit of volunteering is more dominant in the women. And specifically, we are told that they volunteer and they actually make themselves the different coverings of the tabernacle. The yeriot, the strips of cloth that cover. Altogether there are 4 levels, but the 2 important ones are the first 2 coverings. The first are called yeriot HaMishkan, the cloth that cover the tabernacle. And that's made up of various materials. There's blue, purple, and crimson yarns and fine linen. And that's the first level. And then the second one, the more interesting one, is made up of goat's wool that was woven especially. And 2 beautiful expressions are used. The first, in regards to the preparation of the first covering, we are told that every wise-hearted woman wove, it's in the singular, every woman wove a piece, and all these pieces were put together, and that created the first covering. And then the second one has something even more powerful. It says, all the women whose heart carried them with wisdom. Kol hanashim asher nasa liban otana bechokhma. So in the first verse, we're just told that every wise-hearted woman wove her piece of the yeriot, of the covering. And in the second one, they were all together somehow, v'chol hanashim, together, asher nasa liban otana bechokhma. It's a very beautiful poetic verse that it's almost as if they're not doing anything. It's their hearts sort of bursting out, carrying them, and they also connect in a collective way. And then it says tavu et ha'izim, they wove the goats. Now, because it doesn't say that they wove the wool of the goats, it says that they wove the goats. Then the interpretation that we have, quite well known, Rashi brings it, is that they had an extra special craft or knowledge. They were able to weave the wool of the goats while it was still on the goats. So the usual way of doing things is that you want to take a material, a substance that's coming from an animal, like a skin, leather, or wool, or whatever it is. First, you kill the animal, or you shear the animal. In the case of sheep and goats, you don't have to kill them, but you have to disconnect the material that you want to use from the animal, because the animal is moving and it's distracting, and you want to keep it quiet. So you want to detach. You want to disconnect the animal that's in your way with the wool that's what you want. But apparently there was some advantage. Maybe the quality of the weaving was better, or maybe the spiritual quality that was added to the Mishkan was different. But they had a thing in which they were first weave as the wool is being still on the goat. They would weave it and then they would cut it. So this is a very beautiful image of this feminine genius or feminine talent that's able to work with nature, work with the animal nature, the animal soul, the animalistic or natural or wild aspect of the world, to elevate it, refine it, right? To weave it into something higher than it is, but without disconnecting it. So you can imagine a person who wants to focus on studying Torah. So like a typical man would say, everyone quiet, I'm studying now. He will close the door, just like I did just now, to close the door, nobody's to come in. And it has to be in a very, sterile space that's quiet. And then they can start working. So first, if it's an animal is moving, you say, stop moving, let me just cut the wool, and let's send the goat away. And then I can start working with it. I've disconnected it, I've objectified it, it's become an object. But the women were able to work, to do the service of the Mishkan, right? To basically bring the divine into the world and elevate the world into the divine without doing this disconnect, right? They were able to do it. It's like a woman who's able to study Torah as she's taking care of the kids and cooking in the kitchen. She's cooking in the kitchen and listening to a Torah class, or she's doing a chavura over the phone while at the same time carrying a baby. That's basically a beautiful metaphor for this kind of talent. So we talk about many times about women being better at multitasking, but it's far deeper than multitasking. It's basically saying that you're not shushing the world, and you're not shushing your own nefesh, your own psyche, and you don't submit it into, some sort of subservience. You don't frighten it into quiet, into a state of being quiet. Is that instead of working on top of the world, you work within the world. That's basically the metaphor that we have here. So again, we have two coverings. The first is made up of linen and colored cloth. And that's relatively simple. That's every wise-hearted woman contributed a part to this. But then the second level is much more profound, and it has to do with the goats. And by the way, a goat is a domesticated animal. It's a kosher animal, it's a pure animal. But of the pure animals, probably the wildest, in the sense that it has the most azut. Right now we're in war with Gaza for a long time now. And Gaza has been a pain in the neck for a long time. And it all has to do with us being able to work with the property, with the characteristic of azut, the brashness or boldness, but to do it in a good way. So it's very interesting that they did all this specifically with the goats, with the izim. So all this created the higher covering to the Mishkan. And if you read it further down the same parasha, you see that there was something very interesting. The first level was made up of 10 strips of cloth that were put together. But the second level, the higher level, was made up of 11 strips of cloth. It was asymmetrical. In the first level, you had 5 and 5, one parallel to the other, and then they would be connected and create the first level of the covering. A second one has 5 strips of cloth and then 6. It's asymmetrical, and that extra one is something different. So the spiritual idea that's alluded to here is that the whole idea of the coverings of the Mishkan are what we call the surrounding lights of the soul. The soul has inner lights. Inner lights basically means the conscious lights. What we are aware of, what we can cognitively understand and appreciate and work with, in a regular way, that it makes sense. You can hold it in your hands, you contain it in your vessels, in your conscious vessels, and you work with it. But the coverings, all coverings, have to do with the super conscious levels, the surrounding lights, not the inner lights. And here we see that the surrounding lights split into 2 levels. This is called the near surrounding lights and the far surrounding lights, right? There's a near superconscious that is very special, but there's something even more special. That's the far, the more distant, the higher. That's you can even it's even harder to reach, which is the makif rachok, the higher or more distant surrounding light, and that corresponds to the coverings of the goats. So we see here that both are feminine, right? We see here that something very interesting. Men are in the world. They have to do with the inner lights. The men were in charge of the kelim of the Mishkan and the building of most of the Mishkan, the kelim and the krashim, the planks. Most of the Mishkan, we are not told that women were so involved in this. So it appears that building the Mishkan itself was a masculine thing, but then covering it, putting the surrounding light, that was the feminine thing. So ironically, it's something that at first doesn't make sense, but then it makes a lot of sense. You think, so the men are in the world. So why do they have a hard time working with the goats, working with the noise, working with the mess? Because they are also in the world themselves. Because they're in the world, the other things that are in the world, they get in their place. The women are connected to something that's above the world, the surrounding lights, the coverings of the Mishkan. So because they're rooted in this higher level that's above the Mishkan, then they're able to work also within the Mishkan, because they're not of this world as much as the men are, in a very interesting way, if you go along with all these ideas. So we have here this idea that the women have to do with the surrounding lights, both levels, but the extra special work has to do with the really higher one. The two levels are called Chaya and Yechida, right? We know the 5 levels of the soul: Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida. Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, these are the conscious lights, and in this case, they're more masculine. And Chaya and Yechida are the two super conscious lights, or surrounding lights, and they are more feminine. And the extra special art has to do with working in the goats and weaving the wool as it is on the goat, has to do with the highest level, the level of Yechida, the Yechida of the soul, the most mysterious and deep and profound level. So that's the first thing, very beautiful, that we get here. Now look at something else. The two people in charge of building everything about the Mishkan, the two main men, right? We said that the building of the main elements, or the Mishkan itself, not the covering, but the covering is what makes it whole, what completes it, what adds the inspiration. But the rest was built by men, and we have two men that are central. The two men that are central, their names are Betzalel, right, and Ahaliav. Betzalel from the tribe of Yehuda, and Ahaliav from the tribe of Dan. Now, if you look at their names, there's something very interesting here. Betzel-el has to do with being in the shadow of God, right? Being in the shadow of something alludes to something like a tent or like a covering. It's not the thing itself. I am in the shadow. So the name Betzalel appears to allude at the covering, that they cast the shadow into on the Mishkan. So Betzalel his name alludes to the covering. He didn't do the covering, the women did it, but his name is all about it. And Ahaliav, even more beautiful. Ahaliav is Ohel. The first 3 letters of his name is Ohel. Ohel is the tent, the covering. We can even say more than that. Betzalel has to do with the first covering, because that's the part that casts the shadow, right? The moment you put the first one, you already have shadow. So you're in the shadow of the first level. And the second level, the goatskin level, is called the Ohel. That's called the Ohel. So Ahaliav has to do with the higher level. So hang on, it looks like they're taking they didn't do it. Women did it. So they're called this way. What does that mean? So I think the most beautiful way of explaining this is that Betzalel and Ahaliav are very good in thinking about the surrounding lights, talking about the surrounding lights. They're named after them. It's like they're experts in thinking about the surrounding lights. But the women actually live it. They experience it. They bring it down. They actually realize it in the world. So you have a beautiful thing here. You can have, we're seeing this in our generation. We're seeing that we have many men who have been studying Chassidut for many, many years. And they know whole ma'amarim, by rote. And they can whistle it, and you can wake them up in the middle of the night, and they can recite all the sefirot and all the olamot. And they know a lot of Chassidut. I'm not talking about Jewish law and the Gemara. I'm talking about the spiritual part, Chassidus and Kabbalah. So many men, they know all the vocabulary and all the words and all the models and all the concepts. But there's one thing that's to talk about it, to understand it cognitively. Then come the women into the fold. That's a new thing that women are studying in-depth Chassidut. It's happening only for a few decades now. It's not that before there were exceptional women, but so many women studying Chassidut, it's a new phenomenon. But these women, they're not called after. They don't have the name Betzalel and the Haliav. Have to do with the Tzel and the Ohel. But when they get there, they just get it. They weave it. They understand it. They can take those surrounding lights and not say, okay, so we have, living down here, and then we have those higher realms over there. They actually go up and bring those lights into the world. They weave the surrounding lights into the world. That's the idea of weaving on top of the goat while it's still being connected to the goat. For them, the animal soul, which is being alive, being connected to the world, having emotions, having feelings, and talking about lofty things such as surrounding lights, it totally goes together. For the men, they would say, those surrounding lights are so high, there's something very theoretical, very spiritual. Don't mix it up with your feelings or with your day-to-day life. Your daily life has nothing to do with those great surrounding lights. But the women say, no, come on, it doesn't work this way. It's all one, it's all connected, it's all woven together. So this is another beautiful level to this whole thing. So first we just had the idea that it's the women who are in charge of the coverings of the Mishkan. And then we had the differentiation between the two levels, which is the close makif and the farther makif, and the farther one being the most profound, has to do with taking this azut of the goats and being able to work with it and elevate it. And then we have the differentiation between the men and the women. Now we're going to add another level. We can ask, who was the first woman to have this wisdom of the heart, this chokhmat halev? So there's a beautiful interpretation that comes in Chronicles, Divrei Yamim. It appears in the Targum of a verse there, Targum Yonatan, and he points to Miriam as being the originator of this wisdom and the first to weave the wool on the goats and basically teach the other women. She was the master. She was the one who knew how to do it, and she did it. And what is the verse? So the verse is a very mysterious verse, and he talks about Kalev, and it says that Kalev gave birth to a woman called Azuvah and another woman called Yeriot. And then it says that Azuvah passed away and he married a woman called Ephrat. And this is important because Ephrat and Kalev here become the great-grandparents of Betzalel. It says that they give birth to Chur, and Chur gave birth to Uri, and Uri gave birth to Betzalel. Now, there are many weird women names here. There's Azuvah, there's Yeriot, and there's Ephrat, and we've never heard of them before. So Chazal, the sages, they're in the book of Chronicles, you have all these lineages, and they don't make sense many times. They don't connect to what we know from the Torah, and it's very confusing. So Chazal realized there's a lot of secrets going on here, a lot of mysteries. So basically they said that all three women here, although they appear to be three different women, and two of them appear to be daughters of Kalev, and one of them appears to be the wife, they say it's all the same woman. It was all Miriam. Miriam was his wife, but also a kind of daughter to him. Why? Because it says, and now here comes the whole explanation, it says that Miriam was very sickly. Miriam, her name, starting with her name, it has to do with bitterness. It has to do with the Egyptians embittering our lives. She was named after the bitterness of the bondage in Egypt. So if we have Betzalel and the Haliav, who are named based on very spiritual, lofty concepts, Miriam is the very opposite. Miriam was named, she experienced the bitterness, the hardship of life. And it says she was very sickly and very pale. And so the paleness made her as white as a cloth. And that's why she had the name or the how do you call this? Like a kinui, like a, not a nickname, but a kind of another title, another kind of name that was given to her was Yeriot. Yeriot is like the coverings of the Mishkan. And she was like as pale as cloth. It also says that nobody wanted to marry her. That's why she had another kind of description, which is azuva. Azuva is someone who's forsaken, who's no one wants her. Kalev did marry her, and because it says that everyone who marries a woman l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven, nobody wanted her, and he did this great mitzvah of marrying her, it's as if he gave birth to her. That's why the book of Chronicles, Divrei Yamim, has them being described as his daughters. And finally she became well, and that is the name Efrat. Efrat has to do with refuah. So now all four names it's all Miriam. Miriam, her name was Miriam. She was pale like a yeriot of a tent, and nobody wanted to marry her, so she was azuva. And then he did marry her, and she became well again, and that's why she's called Efrat, right? Now, basically, the idea is, then comes Targum Yonatan, right? The Targum written by Yonatan ben Uziel, the great Tana. And then he says that because of all this ordeal that God saw, that she was so forsaken and sickly and nobody wanted her, he gave her this wisdom as compensation. He gave her the wisdom of the chokhmat lev, the wisdom of the heart, to be able to weave the wool on top of the goats, which she taught to all the other women. Not only that, but we're told that after all this, when she became well again, she became healthy again, Efrat, she became the most beautiful woman. So we have here a woman who started out very sickly and pale and nobody wanted her, would experience the bitterness of life more than other people. She had this ability, that's how she led all the other women with the tambourines and with this dancing, because she was able to really experience the hardship of life. She found this man who loved her, and she was elevated and she became well until she became the most beautiful and one of the mothers of David HaMelech, of the Mashiach. So because of all this ordeal, she was able to learn this wisdom. What do we learn from this? We learn from this something very beautiful about the way women experience the world and what they can do with the way they experience the world. Women experience the hardship of life, the heartache, the pain, the worry, the sense of they're empathetic. Their own sufferings, they take very much to heart. They don't brush it away like many men do. Oh yeah, so it's hard, but boys don't cry. So Jewish boys do cry, which is a good thing, but that's because they're connected to their feminine side. But the women are there at the very start. They live the heart. They live the heartache. They live the hardship. Not only their own, but other women as well. We saw that the highest level of the covering was all the women collectively, empathetically working together. So because of this hardship, that's where that art of weaving the coverings as it's on the go, taking the hardship of life, the azim, the kochot azim of life, and instead of trying to brush them away or suppress them or sink into them, wallow in them, that's also a danger. But if the woman learns how not to wallow in the pain, not to be drowning in the pain, but also not to brush it away, to grow from it, to experience it, and use it as an energy of growth and learning, this is what connects her to the surrounding lights. So the men, basically, it turns out, they live in the middle level. They build the Mishkan. The Mishkan is on top of the ground. It's on top of the abyss of the pain, of the hardship, but it's under the surrounding lights. The women experience both extremes. They go down into the depth of the bitterness and the hardships, and they feel the pain of every woman who's azuva, who's not loved. When they themselves are not loved, they feel it, they know it. But that is also where the key is to growing and drawing from, weaving into the world, the surrounding lights, the light of emunah, and the light of hope, and the light of new choices to be made, and new visions. You draw these lights, it comes to you because you're dealing with the hardships. And we can even say more than that. We can of all these names that Miriam has, some are good names, like Efrat, and some are negative names, like the other ones that we experienced. Miriam is in between, because Miriam also has to do with harama, with leharim. So Azuvah is negative, and Yiriot is negative, but Miriam is in between, and Efrat is totally positive. So and there are even more names, by the way. So some names are positive, some names are negative, and we can say that the first level of the Yiriot, the one that's made of the linen and the colored cloth, that came. It was a beautiful piece of work. That came from the beautiful part of her, the joyful part, the happy part, the positive names. But the highest level, the level of Yechidah that comes from the goat, that came from her negative names. That came from the parts of her that were suffering and dealt with the suffering, confronted it, worked with it, elevated it. And through those sufferings, through those tears, they reached even higher. And I'll conclude this with a beautiful allusion that the two names of the two levels of the surrounding lights, they're called Chaya, right, and Yechidah. Now, in a different place in the Zohar, it says that every heart that's really whole has two emotions at the same time. There's B'chiyah on one side, weeping, and there's Chidva, joy, on the other side. Now, there are several words for this, but the words that the Zohar uses are Chidva, joy, and B'chiyah, weeping. Why am I mentioning this now? Because the numerical value, the gematria of Chidva, joy, is Chaya, the closer surrounding light. But the numerical value, the gematria of B'chiyah, weeping, is, you can guess it, it's Yechidah. It's the higher level. So through the joyful aspect of Miriam, she learned how to do the basic art of weaving, which is the art of weaving that every woman worked on her own, and they did the beautiful first covering, the Yiriot HaMishkan, with all their beautiful colors. But from the sorrow, the pain, the tears, the crying, that's where she learned, that's how she got, as a compensation from Hashem, this wisdom. It came to her because she was suffering, through the suffering, from the tears, she was able, because she herself was in a way like the goat that needed to be woven into something higher while still being a goat, by still being connected to the heart, connected to the body, connected to the energy of this world. So she was herself, she had to do it on herself so she could do it on the goat. She had to take her aching heart and weave it and elevate it. And so from this B'chiyah, tears, she connected to the Yechidah, to the highest level, and came up with this beautiful art and taught it to the other women. And then they all knew it, almost telepathically. It was something that they could understand and do it together. And that's the secret of the wise-hearted women, or some of the secrets. This was all based, by the way, on a shiur from Rav Yitzchak Ginsburg, that we've been blessed in our generation to be learning all these beautiful things from. Hi everyone, if you enjoyed this episode, please press like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. If you want more English language videos from me, please consider becoming a supporter via Patreon. You can find the link in the description below. Thank you very much, and see you in the next episode.